Well, everyone loves a holiday with the family, but sometimes it can be a little bit incompatible or feel that way to fulfill all your sketching ambitions, but also spend loads of quality family time when you're abroad together. This last week, my family and I were in Crete. We were there for a sun and sea holiday, but I had ambitions to sketch. I gave myself the best chance possible by making sure that I would have a sketching kit on my person at all times, ready for a sketching opportunity or a sketching op. And in this video, I'm going to show you all the little sketching ops that I encountered this last week and see if any of them strike a chord with you and make you think, oh yeah, that might be a good time or opportunity to sketch. Now, I did absolutely no research about where we were going before we left. I don't know what I was thinking, and I ended up taking my family and myself to the absolutely end of the road, the middle of nowhere, the far side of the mountain range of the south of Crete, with nothing but hairpin bends connecting you to, I suppose, civilization, literally, and the south of the island. So, onto the sketching. Well, the only taverna in our little village was right next to our villa, but it had a beautiful view, and I took my first sketch op, which was when my family, I suppose the younger kids, they just took their time in turning up, and I said, look, I'll do this quickly. There was actually only one boat, but because the current was quite strong, it was twisting and turning rather a lot, so I just waited for it to take up the different position each time and then just drew what I could when it was pointing in the right direction. For the little rib on the left, it had a very pretty shadow on the sea floor, and I drew that in just using my ink pen, and I thought it worked really well, so I'll do that in future. Sketch up number 2. Well, if you're staying somewhere nice, it's a great opportunity to make yourself comfortable and sketch the view from your terrace. But let's see what's in the sketch pocket. Now, this is the sketch pocket midi. It takes an A5 sketchbook. It's also got an A6 sketchbook in it, 2 sets of paints, 3 pens, a white gel pen, 2 water brushes, a collapsible water container, a travel brush, 2 vials of ink. So I have all this beside me on the sofa. And the next thing after the lines is that I add all the blues, and I'm adding the shadows in a nice bright blue. Never quite sure what shade of blue, so I did a few little different shades you can see there. Then when I'd done all that, I painted a dark olivey green for the trees, and I added a slight pink colour for the cliffs. On to sketch op 3. Well, we drove the 40 minutes that it took to go to the next village, and we had some beers, and to our surprise, we ended up sitting in the bar right next to the one person we kind of knew in Crete, the man who ran the mini market in our tiny little village. And he was just as surprised to see us as we were to see him, and he bought us a round of beers, which kind of tells you something about how many tourists people from that neck of the woods run into. I drew him while people were drinking the beers that he kindly bought. I showed him the sketch I'd done of him, but he was, let's say he was nonplussed. The little village where we were staying is accessible only by the most horrendous hairpin bends coming down the side of a mountain, up and down many mountains. So that explains why there aren't any tourists there. I'll let you have a look for yourself what they look like. Here we are in the Palace of Knossos. Well, not the fruit stand. This is the Palace of Knossos. The murals are all reproductions. And once I figured that out, I didn't really look too closely at them, but I really wish I had now, because they're done well. I know from going to the museum afterwards. They are really lovely. And you know, the thing about looking through your phone, I didn't even know I'd seen that one of the bull because I was so busy taking movies. But there you go. Now, this palace is perched up on a hill just outside Heraklion. And I believe there are over 4 floors, or maybe there are 4 floors, but there's so many rooms. There's 1,300 rooms in this palace that they've identified.
Nice place to live.
It was very hot, but I was very happy. I was very happy to be there. Even though I had my sketch pocket slung over my shoulder, I didn't do any sketching. And to be quite honest with you, I really regret that. Actually, I probably couldn't have, because I did have the family with me and they were anxious to keep moving. But I would love to go back someday and do some sketching there. Sketch up number 4. After Knossos, we found a place to have coffee. 2 of my kids decided to nip off and get waffles, which gave me loads of time to sketch. Then it was time for lunch, and the seafood in Crete is just to die for. It's so good, and I don't sketch when I'm eating hot food. After lunch, we found the Archaeology Museum of Heraklion, and the artefacts there that have been dug out of Crete and the Palace of Knossos are just amazing. They are so inspiring. I loved what I saw. It seemed to me that these people had enough to eat and didn't seem to be at war. So they just had fun making things, painting. Sketching up number 5 in Heraklion Museum itself. I had my sketch pocket, I had all my bits and pieces, and it was no trouble to whip out my pen and my water brush and do a tiny bit of sketching. And because I was just standing up, not making a fuss, not taking up any space, and not using any open water, the guards didn't seem to mind at all. Drawing the octopus on that pretty little vase, I was transported back to possibly my early teenage years, drawing the very same vase in art class. It was the first time I discovered that drawing octopuses is really, really hard. The next morning, back in our little village, I had sketch up number 6. All the dudes sitting around drinking coffee. That fat guy at the back in the middle, he looked so good. He wore a big host of wooden crosses and a thing on his head, and he looked great. Sketch up number 7. Now, this was the only time I did sneak off when the rest of my family were doing things like swimming and stuff, and it was the only time I had that feeling of loneliness and FOMO, and I wish I was with them. But I was glad to have the sketch that I did in the end. Sketch up number 8. If you're near the beach, draw the beach. It's a lovely subject, very dramatic, and is lovely if everybody's having a little nap after a long and lazy lunch. So get out there and draw the beach. Get those people in. Really easy to do their reflections. Sketch up number 9. This was probably, was it my favourite one? If it wasn't my favourite one, it was close to being my favourite one. Now, where we were staying in this little village of Cali Limenes, you could argue that the beautiful vista was marred by the rocky island just outside the bay. That was in fact a bunker, filling station for passing ships. But you soon got used to the sight and you didn't see it anymore after that. The water lapping against the rocks was so pretty. It was sparkly and turquoisey and fresh and clear. And I did my best to capture what I saw. Just getting the inclines down first. It was early morning, and as I looked up, this little boat came into view with these guys far too cool to sit down, silhouetted against the morning light. And they chugged slowly into the bay and drew up close against the quay and stepped off. I guess they were all going to work somewhere. And they got into this little Fiat Panda and drove away, leaving me without a subject. I really tried hard to capture the sparkles of the sun on the water and the ripples crashing against the rocks. I don't know if I achieved it. It's not easy because not alone does it moves very fast and changes quite dramatically. So after I did the drawing stage and got the shapes of everything in as best I could, I started adding lines of water and ripples and shades of green and blue, making sure to leave parts of it completely unpainted to capture those sparkly effects. I tried to get the transparent look of the reflections under the rocks. I don't know if I got it exactly right, but I was very pleased with it. Sketch up number 10. Draw your better half. They will be happy to oblige, and the two of you can spend some quality time together. The two of us went down to the cafe together one morning, and I really, really enjoyed the half an hour that I spent with him, just the two of us, sketching away. You can see the guy I drew in the earlier sketch there in the background on the right. He made a great subject, and I could draw him again and again. I'd never get tired of him. Sketch up number 11. I went down to the centre of the village early one morning, thinking I would draw more locals, maybe that chunky guy again. But to my great surprise, the entire village was full of Americans who had arrived on a great big tour bus. I have no idea how it managed to get there, what with all those hairpin bends. Now, these guys were on a pilgrimage. Cali Jimenez has a great significance in the Bible with St. Paul and a centurion and a becalmed storm. But I was so delighted when they bent their heads in prayer, because it gave me a good opportunity to sketch them. So the moral there is, take your opportunity when it arises. I want to give a shout out to that little dog in the foreground. He was troubling a cat, and the cat was making all these meowing sounds, and a little local boy was being dispatched to take the dog away because it was disturbing the people in prayer. The dog was taken away, and the dog had the biggest smile on his face, if it's possible for a dog to have a smile on his face, having thoroughly bothered the cat, and I really enjoyed putting him into my sketch. Sketch up number 12. Well, we shinned down a cliff to get to this beach. It's called Prevelly Beach, and I had left my phone in the car, but I never went anywhere without my sketch pocket slung over my shoulder. And it just goes to show, whilst I didn't abseil down the cliff, I was able to draw at the bottom of the cliff because of my sketch pocket. So I was very happy about that. Sketch up number 13. This was one of the few times that I actually asked my companions if they would mind letting me have 15 or 20 minutes to do a sketch, and they obliged. So I was very grateful for that, and I really enjoyed drawing the beautiful scene, especially seeing as I'd forgotten my phone to take any pics. The pictures are all taken with my husband's phone. So yeah, ask if you really can't resist and you think that your party won't mind you making them hang around for a bit. Just ask if they don't mind. Sketch up number 14. If you have willing subjects, just don't forget to ask them to pose for you. And my youngest daughter and her young fella were delighted to pose for me reading their books, and they kept still. Sketch up number 15. Well, if the food is cold, and it's not going to get colder, sketch it. I really had to sketch a Greek salad because it was my favourite thing to eat when I was away. And of course, you can sit around and it doesn't get colder. It was also a nice subject to choose because it was very representative of what we had eaten in Crete. Not to mention the bottle of raki, which was served at the end of every meal with some gorgeous fruit. Last but not least, sketch up number 16. My plane was delayed, but even if it hadn't been, aren't we all usually waiting for a little bit at the airport? And it's lovely to go and park yourself somewhere and sketch what you see. And I have to give a shout out to the beautiful airport worker who had zero English, but every time she looked at my work, she just kept saying, I love you, which was absolutely adorable and so touching. She was a beautiful lady, and I just really appreciated her. Thank you everyone for watching, and I really hope you've enjoyed my little week in Crete and all the sketches I made. And I wish you luck in making tons of sketches on your next family holiday too.